Hello, crowd. This time I spoke to Noordanus about his research findings on entrepreneurial traits to adopt or build to ensure business continuity during a crisis, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Here with Noordanus. We are just having a chat here at a coffee shop about his experience in startup work. How about you introduce yourself and what you've been working with? I think this is a topic that's really valuable for new entrepreneurs especially. But your background and what you have been working on certainly goes along the post-revenue, stable income kind of like skill set.
For sure, absolutely.
Might as well just introduce you and see what you have to say to entrepreneurs.
For sure. Well, hello, my name is Noordanus, as Diego said, and it's awesome to be on your podcast, Diego, and awesome to talk about this topic, entrepreneurship, and we're hoping to really tackle and get into sort of the thinking and the traits that go on behind the scenes, and especially looking at those entrepreneurial traits during difficult, turbulent, uncertain times, such as during a pandemic. That is what I've kind of specialised in during my studies. I've just completed my postgrad studies, my Masters of Commerce at the University of Canterbury, and my major was in marketing. However, my studies extended over from marketing and looking into entrepreneurial marketing, which I'll get to in a second, and looking at that in a continuity lens, continuing business practices during an uncertain, turbulent environment such as the dreaded COVID-19 pandemic we've all had to face. So that's been my focus, and so this podcast will be very much from my studies. Written a daunting 40,000 word thesis, but this podcast will be a shortened version of that thesis, and really tackling the findings and sort of the applications of what I found, so rather than reading that, you can just listen to this. In regards to actual to startups and actually entrepreneurship myself, like you can imagine, to write a 40,000 word thesis on a topic like this, you have to have some passion towards it. 22, and so I'd say the startup experience I have is solely a little just thing I've had going for the last couple of years, which is simply just buying and flipping old movie posters from cinemas, selling those on, and that's as simple as it gets with my startup experience. And so this will be very heavy from a research side of it. For those of you listening, but if you're not so sure on the research side, what it entailed was sitting down face to face with some of New Zealand's quite poignant entrepreneurs and business CEOs, and really getting to the gist of how they got through the pandemic from an entrepreneurial skills and thinking side of it. And my sample of entrepreneurs ranged from businesses that have been going 2 years, 1 year, to businesses that have been going 20 and 30 years. So I'll get to that in a second.
With regards to the people that you interviewed, was that like all businesses that had continued their operations post the pandemic, or is that just like a few interviews with people that didn't actually go through it and had a business continuity?
Sure, good question. So my focus being solely and really wanting to get to the nuts and bolts of continuity, I made the first sampling criteria I did was that I would be solely talking with the founding entrepreneurs, the CEOs of businesses that did continue. Continuity is defined within research as the preservation of value, and that's what made it, for me, found it really interesting to pair that with entrepreneurial marketing, because marketing is heavily associated, as we all know, with sort of the communication of value, the creation of value, whether it's around a product and then how you communicate that value and how that value is perceived by your customer base, your audience, number of manners, shapes and forms. So to look at continuity as the preservation of value, I thought that was firstly very relatable with marketing and entrepreneurial marketing, also very topical with wanting to understand how entrepreneurship can play in continuing through the pandemic. So yes, my sample was consisted of 6 businesses, and so consisted of 6 businesses and cases. And I sat down with their founding entrepreneurs, and they had all the basis was that we've all continued. the basis was that they would have had to have all continued their operations during the pandemic and have continued them to the point in time, which was last year, that I was conducting the research. My thesis is available for public reading, so these entrepreneurs won't mind me naming names. But I basically tried to spread it as wide as you can with a 6-person sample. So I had 3 people, 3 entrepreneurs, 3 cases from the North Island, 3 from the South Island. I looked at percentages of essential businesses versus non-essential businesses. That came to about 2 out of 6 businesses were essential, give or take. So two of my sample were essential businesses. Looking at sort of male to female founding entrepreneur ratios in New Zealand, and so 1 in 6 of my cases and my participants, one was a female entrepreneur by the name of Decima McCloy, from New Zealand, and her company is the New Zealand Seed Lab, and the rest of the participants were male. And so that was the criteria for sampling. Wanted to spread the 6-person or 6-case spread out as wide as I could. And then I booked in with these very busy entrepreneurs, the chance to sit down face to face like you and I are doing right now, and I just really wanted to get to the bottom as to how. I said first question really was, walk me through the process you went through to making firstly the decision to continue, and then walk me through how that went for you and your business during the pandemic.
Oh, cool. That would be my next question. Then what were their replies?
For sure, absolutely. And that brings us to the thesis and their replies. And so, following the interviews, collecting the data, the transcripts, I was recording it just like a podcast. The idea was it was semi-structured because I really wanted. Yes, I had questions, but I wanted the freedom for the entrepreneurs to tell a story, to talk. I didn't want them boxed into answers. And the entrepreneurs, very free thinking, free flowing people, and so I really wanted the chance for them to just speak freely, and especially because it can be definitely a traumatic thing, I think, for business owners to look back on the pandemic. Some of the participants I spoke to had to let people go, let staff go. There's financial stress that they associate with that time, a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. So I wanted to be respectful to that. I didn't want to box them in with a sort of journalist, sort of against the wall, hard-hitting question. So the answers I got basically shaped what my research became, which was the framework, 5-step framework, which was an entrepreneurial marketing business continuity model. And basically it broke it down with the continuity decision at the center of it, and then a before and an after. And so the before looked like the influences and the impacts that shaped that decision. As you think about any decision to buy a t-shirt, for example, there will be external factors that impact that decision and influence it, and then internal ones that's going on in your head. So an example, external would be external marketing messages and communications, ads, billboards that show you this t-shirt and the models that wear it. And then the internal influences is the battle going on in your head as to, should I pursue this? What would make it so great for me? What can I achieve? And that's the things that no one really sees. So that's exactly what I did. I broke, and that's what my answers from these people, from these participants, shaped, was that the decision to continue was in fact shaped by the external environmental impacts of the pandemic, as well as the internal entrepreneurial influences that was going on inside of the entrepreneurial mind and the entrepreneurial way of thinking. And so I'll get right into that. I won't overindulge, but firstly, examples of the external environmental impacts, and these findings were consistent amongst all 6 participants, and that's how they become findings in the thesis research. They don't have to be unanimous, but for them to be findings, they have to demonstrate a strong theme of consistency to be recognised as themes and sub-themes and codes and constructs within a research project. So the external environmental impacts I broke down into, firstly, the impacts experienced personally and impacts experienced by their business as a whole. Personal impacts is things like stress, the weight on their shoulders, feeling of responsibility where they owe it to their employees to get them through this. One of my participants, Angus Brown, he's the co-founder of Arepa, which is quite a upcoming brain food drink based in the North Island. It's really conquering the world, and it's coming up very quickly. He had a quote in my thesis which he gave, which talked about sort of the feeling where you've got to put a shield up between you and your employees, where you really can't unload everything that the founder is carrying in their head on your employees, because they're sign on as your employees doing you the work, but the entrepreneur carries a weight and a stress on their shoulders that really goes unseen. So that's an example of the personal impacts that are created from the external environment of the pandemic that's shaping this decision whether or not to continue. And then, of course, there's the business-wide impacts, and that's things like their business being impacted by the external pandemic, such as the restrictions that got put in place. Can we work together? Are we isolated? Are we actually going to be able to perform our service? Yep. There's so many services and products where the products could be made. So many raw materials that were just unable to be obtained, supply chains being down, interrupted. Those are examples of external business impacts that are created because of the pandemic environment. So those are the external impacts. The internal entrepreneurial influences that I found, again, through all of my cases, consistently, I broke down into two forms, and this is applicable to all entrepreneurs: self-efficacy and effectual reasoning. The self-efficacy is defined as the entrepreneur's belief in oneself and in their ability. And this can be seen in all cases of entrepreneurship, right? Because to start something, you have to back yourself. It starts with just you, or maybe a co-founder, or maybe a group. But you have to believe in what you're doing enough to put in the hard hours, to invest in yourself, to back it, and grow a following that basically starts with just yourself. And that is self-efficacy. Secondly, effectual reasoning, which is defined as the assessment of the current risks, resources that are available to a company, and basically using the knowledge of what is currently available to inform future decisions and quote-unquote predict the future, if you will. And again, that's entrepreneurs trait well known to the entrepreneurship, looking at what we have to predict and inform decisions moving forward, hence effectual reasoning. So looking at in a disaster setting, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, a crisis, self-efficacy looked at believing in your own ability enough to say, hey, we can continue through this. Yep. Yes, this is crap. Pandemic is uncertain. Are we going to die from this? Are we going to get through it? It was so foreign at the time. And that, again, was something that was said by all my participants, basically all of them, which was, we didn't know what was going to happen. It was truly uncertain. But a lot of them clung to, mottos or turn of phrases, which was, she'll be right, or but we'll get through it. We've gotten through everything else, earthquakes and shootings, we'll get through this as well. Yeah. And then found a whole different theme amongst my participants, which was quotes just like that, where yes, they would recognize the bad things, but their belief in themselves and their ability in their business and the fact that things would be alright was so strong that they would end any sentence basically with, yeah, but I knew we'd get through it, or had a feeling we'd get through it. And that self-efficacy, and that, Diego, you're talking about the mindsets and the skills to get through, and from an entrepreneurship point of view, what that looks like in an uncertain crisis environment like the pandemic. That's what that looks like. It's still there, and that is truly an entrepreneurial mindset in that setting. The effectual reasoning looks a bit beyond your belief in yourself and looks at what you've got and what you can do with it. So in cases, they looked at what resources they had and what they could do in a time where there was not much that you could do. There's a lot you had to sacrifice. People were isolated, but what did you have and what could you do? Yeah. For example, the businesses that were essential. For example, the New Zealand Seed Lab, based here in Christchurch under Decima McCloy, it's been running since 1992. Deemed essential, she was able to continue her operations. However, she relies very heavily on a lot of resources being shipped in from Switzerland. And because of the delays with the pandemic, a lot of that wasn't coming through. So she looked at what she did have, and that informed her decision to continue and how she was going to continue. Yes, she'd been granted the right by the government to continue as an essential service, but that's nice and all. But a lot of essential services did fold as well. So yes, it didn't necessarily mean immunity to to ceasing operations. Sure, it helped in a lot of ways, but there were still challenges. And so effectual reasoning looked at that, looked at the risks as well, assessing the risks. Can we get through that? And that's why effectual reasoning is paired so well with self-efficacy. You look at the risks, and then you look at your own ability. And that was a very strong theme I found throughout my findings. A participant by the name of Dion Nash, he's an ex-New Zealand professional cricketer. He founded a company called Triumph in Disaster in 2012, I believe, 2011 potentially, up in Ponsonby, Auckland is where they're based. And they had a market that stretched globally, very much in the premium luxury industry for men's skincare. And a risk that he assessed was basically the oncoming supply delays and the difficulty to maintain such a retail presence, which is what they relied on a lot overseas with the lockdowns and the pandemics. So he made the decision to come back and retrench in the New Zealand market. Sacrifice, yes, but it ensured continuity. So those are the examples we talk about the answers that I got. Those are the influences and the impacts that shaped the decision to continue. They looked at the impacts, the external impacts, personal related and business related, and they looked at the internal influences that were going on internally within them, the entrepreneurs themselves, self-efficacy and effectual reasoning.
So from the effectual reasoning point of view, you mentioned that obviously entrepreneurs had to make really tough calls. Did they share with you how they made that decision? Because everything is uncertain. How do you make the call as to what you could potentially sacrifice and what's essential for your business? Given these turbulent times, how do you make that call? Did they share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to reference effectual reasoning, as I said, it takes into account the resources and the risks available, and that shapes the decision. And so, naturally, like you said, with the difficult decisions, one of the participants shared a case where a resource that they assessed, that they identified as being very helpful, as a lot of companies did, was of course the wage subsidy that came out to help in that. For some companies enabled to do various different things based on the various different environments, but a key theme for a lot of companies was the paying of staff wages in a time when revenue was very low. And one of my participants talked about a time where yes, they used that resource while they could to hold on to their staff, but a tough call was the how long is too long to hold on to staff when it comes to continuity of the business. Is the business going to fold here? And unfortunately, they did have to let go of certain staff, but the wage subsidy allowed them to hold on to them for longer. And looking back, it was a difficult thing. He described it as traumatic to look back on. So the decision and the feeling associated with it rings true 4 or 5 years later. Sorry, 4 or 3 years later, rings true. Yet it's a logical decision where you consider the resources you have available. Yes, this can keep my staff on for a bit longer. But then he also considered the risk, which was, are we going to fold here if I continue to hold on to resources that unfortunately are surplus to requirements? So that's an example of an effectual reasoning situation that informed a very difficult decision. Another example, the Flat Pack company, founded by Angus Syme, who's a initially Christchurch-based student from Otago University, but born in Christchurch, and business partner Cameron Lee. So I sat down with both of them. They're doing very, very well, the Flat Pack company, and they've recently just entered the United States, the American market, getting into that because their whole model was student beds. Target priced for students at a time where there really wasn't a student alternative for bed. It was sort of go second hand or pay an arm and a leg for a brand new one from the same place your parents got it. But they mastered the student bed market here in New Zealand, and now they've entered the college American college market, which, as you can imagine, is ginormous. And so they spent a lot of time this year over in Kansas City, just kicking ass over there. So I sat down with those boys, and they talked about a time, again, factual reasoning, resources, and risk, where, and by the way, their whole value proposition, their promise to their clients is that students will get the bed on the day they move into their flat, because that's a big admin thing for students is, my flat starts today, my bed gets in next week, I guess I'm on the couch, look, all my other flatmates are on the couch, I'm on the floor. And so their whole thing was, we get it to you when you move into your student flat. And it was getting to a point where, talk about assessing resources, the supply delays globally from China, I believe it was making that due date look like an unlikely possibility. Even things like students select type of bed frames, white frames, oak frames, and a lot of them selected oak, and they'd actually ran out of oak, and they're looking at like flip, risk here. Risk is loss of audience, loss of consumer base, loss of potential loyalty, and big risk, I guess, being unable to perform and deliver. The resources don't have, and that contributed to that risk. So the decision that they made is more of a positive story than the one before, but the decision led to inform the decision that they made, which was, firstly, they thought, should we send out a big blanket email like, hey guys, we failed, we can't meet our promise? And then they talked about it, they said, no, listen, like it's kind of not over till it's over, and there's a wall between us and the consumer, and we choose what we throw over that wall and what we tell them. And so in the end, what they did is they got creative in the way they approached this, and they actually called certain students going, hey, listen, congratulations, you're one of how many students that we've just promoted from oak frames to white frames. And the students were like, oh, really? That's me, thank you. If you want. And apparently some students did go, oh, thank you, but I'll stick to the oak frames, and they might have had 20 oak frames, and they said, well, we ran out of those 20, and people still wanted it, then we would have had to have a very difficult discussion. Yeah. However, a lot of them actually did say, yeah, we'll jump on the white bed frame. Yeah. So those are examples. Yeah. And those are examples of effectual reasoning formed the answer to difficult decisions. So that's the first half of the decision to continue. And then my research then went and looked at the other half, which was once you've continued, what do you do now? How do you go about doing it? Yeah. And what are the behavioral traits you can action that will assist you achieving strong, firm, effective business continuity?
Cool. I mean, I guess maybe just before we go into that part, what were the subtle differences between, I know you looked at the commonalities, but were some of the difference for founder? Because I'm assuming that, obviously every industry is going to be different. So, maybe some of these differences will apply to specific industries. So, just if you could share a bit of that.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, it was a six case sample, 6 businesses, I guess technically 7 entrepreneurial participants with Angus and Cam, who were co-founders. And so again, with the sampling criteria, my whole point was I wanted no 2 businesses from the same industry. So flat pay company from technically, I guess, furniture, home and living. Triumph Disaster, men's skincare, health and beauty, well-being, men's skincare. The New Zealand Seed Lab, it's a New Zealand Ministry of Primal Industries. So essential service, Arepa, food and beverage. Lads Without Labels, which is a student club at the University of Canterbury. However, as of 2 years ago, they were registered as a nationwide charity. And so, interviewed them as well. And finally, I interviewed David Brown, founder of SkyTech, which is a construction hoist and construction equipment business, and offer both product and service to construction companies all over New Zealand. Yeah. So those are the 6 very different industries, as you can hear. And that was what was so fascinating. It's very different problems, very different scale problems, yet the influences, the decisions, and the actions, there were similarities and themes throughout, and that added to the credibility of the findings in the end, ultimately. So you talk about differences between these industries. I'll give you an example of Lads Without Labels, for example. They're a charity that offers a service, primarily a service that is running events and offering counselling services to mainly tertiary aged men, but New Zealand men in general. Basically, it was during the greatest disconnect in our country's history, potentially, in the last century. And so, they had just started 2019. They registered as a university club, and then February 2020, they arrived at Clubs Day, got our list of sign-ups, and then we all know March 2020, it all hit the fan, and we were in lockdown. And so only a couple months old, they had to find a way to really still create an offering and stay relevant, and not just stay stable, pause, or get out. And so they looked at, again, the resources they had, and which was their team, and I guess what was available to all of us, which was Zoom. And they looked, and obviously social media. What did they have resource-wise? Well, they just gathered a list of emails and a list of social medias from Clubs Day of their brand new following, there is a way we can still keep in contact. So we're talking here a very new, small-scale club/charity. That's how they went about that. And then I compare that to David Brown from Skytech, a very, very large construction lift company that was actually called Higher Access at the time. And this is the story, because basically what happened is he rebranded and changed his offering. And that's on a way bigger scale than Lads Without Labels, but similarities can be found where you looked at what you got and what you need to do to get through this. And he basically had to pivot and sort of restructure and reconfigure his business model as a means to achieve that. And I guess Lads Without Labels did that as well. They reconfigured their offering from these in-person events on campus that raise awareness, face-to-face counselling, chats. They had to reconfigure their offering, similar industry, but they reconfigured how they were going about doing that. David Brown was under the name Higher Access, which offered scissor lifts, cherry picker lifts, construction industry, and basically he had founded that following off the back of the Canterbury earthquakes, realising we're going to need a lot of construction equipment to start rebuilding things, and this is a market to get into. And he noticed a gap in opportunity, as all entrepreneurs do, and he dove into the construction industry, starting in Christchurch, and then went New Zealand wide with it. And basically, going into the pandemic, he was Higher Access, and then basically got to a point where he had X amount of ships coming over on the boat still that weren't going to come to Christchurch anytime soon, and he wasn't deemed an essential service yet. He sort of had to make do, as we all did, and he was fortunate enough to get involved in a couple government contracts that he was chasing during lockdown. He sent out messages, hey, listen, if there's government contracts, there's council work that needs help with, emergencies that need help with, I'm here, my equipment can help. And he did get work out of that, and which led to the hearing about a job up North Island for a government prison that was being constructed. And long story short, basically, he got offered it over a lot of giant construction companies up there, which that was their bread and butter, and that's their sort of stomping ground. He got made an offer from one of these giants companies to be bought out because, in such a crunch time, this company needed the work to stay afloat, as all companies did. And David sold out his company, sold Higher Access as a means of continuity. That wasn't the end. He had already a lot of connections from this business all over New Zealand, and awareness for an opportunity in the market for construction lifts specifically. They're called alley Mac lifts. They go on big construction buildings. It's a way of going up and down for your builders and your construction team. And for also getting parts and equipment up there. And it's a lease sort of model where it can stay on a construction company for years, and you're getting paid weekly for that. So good model. And so he recognised that opportunity, pivoted, used what he had to continue. So a very large nutshell, comparing Lads Without Labels, mental health charity industry, your construction industry with Higher Access / Skytech. Similar situation, similar result, different offering, same business, but different business model. They had to reconfigure, readjust, but the decision was on just two completely different scales, but the entrepreneurial traits were consistent between David Brown and Sam McLean was the founder of Lads Without Labels in 2020. He's a UC alumni. So yeah.
That sounds to me to a piece of I guess it's also research called the luck area. So essentially, what it means is that for entrepreneurs or for people to be luckier, it is more about networking and knowing more people. Because as soon as you have more people, then there's more opportunities, and then you become luckier essentially. So by kind of like branching out and kind of like expanding your network, you get chances to potentially have the opportunity to pivot.
Sure.
That sounds like it for the construction company. For Lads Without Labels, it was just the fact that you have such a big following that they could kind of like they could afford that pivot. From the spiritual point of view. That's really interesting. Thank you.
What do you think of the term luck, like as the sort of like you talk about the luck concept?
I consider myself a lucky person, but that was before I read this paper, right? And to me it resonates a little bit with my experience.
Sure.
if it weren't for the fact that I was willing to put myself out there in different situations, meet different people, maybe be uncomfortable sometimes, because like not you don't always have to have a specific direction. In my experience, it's been like if I hadn't put myself in those situations, I wouldn't, or take the leap.
Sure.
I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Yeah.
So and certainly like now that I'm talking to more people, it's like I'm also growing my own network in a way.
Absolutely.
So it's quite interesting. So you never know what's going to happen with this network, but regardless of what happens, it is still all about like learning from other people.
Sure.
And maybe looking for potential collaboration.
Sure, yeah. It's interesting, like the whole luck idea, because luck, implies by chance, purely coincidental.
Yeah.
Positive thing by chance. And I when I started really picking through the transcripts, there was a lot of that. A lot of them going, "Oh, really lucky that this happened." Really, really lucky that happened. And in the end, I kind of had to change the name of what I was calling it. And there's a lot of research that backs up around the concept of serendipity.
Yeah.
Which is basically, it's not luck, but the series of fortunate events, so to speak. But it's the creation of the fortunate events is linked to sort of your own works. So when you talk about lucky that I had my network that I built, you built that. You went out, you made that happen, and then you were in a situation where you needed it, and you had it. So luck, yes, maybe, but I'd say more serendipity in the sense that fortunate because you made that happen, and you had that up your sleeve, and you're able to utilize your hard work and pay that off. And that was definitely a very strong finding that I found. And my whole research sort of adapted. Naturally, you adapt what's out there. I adapted a entrepreneurial model by my supervisor, brilliant researcher called Dr. Susie Morrish from the University of Canterbury, and that looked at the actions that come out of this decision to continue. And I extended that research and looked at what influences the actions that you choose. We looked at what influences the decision, what influences the action, and the biggest influence, of course, was serendipity, serendipitous occurrence. What is going around you? We go back to David Brown with that government contract he did get, which led to him getting bought out.
Yeah.
Serendipitous occurrence, right? Luck. Right, but then not really luck because he went out, he chased it. He was working hard in the evening. He describes himself going into his yard and his office, his only person there, but he was working harder than any of his employees, and his family were all home sleeping, but he was there working hard, and because of that, he found this opportunity which he seized and cracked into it, and it led to continuity. Serendipitous occurrences. Angus Brown, Cameron Lee. Looking at serendipitous occurrences there, how they could continue. Their market, their bread and butter was students in the halls. Halls. Students come to university, they go to halls, then they go to their flat, and it's that halls to flat where it's I need a bed. I need a bed ASAP. And so they're targeting the halls. And the brilliant thing for their market was it was a petri dish. People were right next to each other. Hey, bro, did you see this ad? There's beds for not that much money. Flip, and they're good quality. Oh my gosh, you're right. And it grows from there. They lost that. Everyone went home. Like I was a uni student. I stayed with my folks. A lot of my friends did. And so they had to quickly go, Flip, this is crunch time for us. We need people looking at our social media, our marketing, our messages, because we need to inform this purchase decision that we really need to happen down the line. And it wasn't happening because their demographic was spread and they couldn't target geographically, marketing-wise. So they pivoted messaging and marketing-wise, and they targeted the parents of these students because they figured, well, students aren't in a position to be thinking about beds, but their parents are, because the parents probably are actually the decision makers and the trigger pullers. They're the ones who actually swipe mum and dad's card to buy this bed, or course related costs. And so they switched up their targeting. They targeted mum and dads, and so the question became, how are we going to target parents? How do you target a mum? How do you target a mum and dad? And that came to try and get in the news. We'll try and get in the newspapers. We'll try and get in the media. Try and get in PR. And so jumped on the blower, rang as many, the stuff, New Zealand Herald, the Press, the Tiger Daily Times, and before they knew it, they were in the newspaper. Student bed, up and coming, killing it. And that led to mums and dads going, "Look, that's pretty good. I'll listen to that. They offer student prices. That's pretty good. How about that? Well, you need a bid next year. We'll buy from these guys." And so examples of serendipitous where I would challenge you and challenge that paper a bit. That it's luck. I think the idea is right, but I wouldn't call it luck, because I think in entrepreneurship, a lot of it comes down to hard works, and what you put in is what you get out.
I mean that's super interesting to me. I say luck mainly because of the lack of a better word, but serendipity is probably the right word. Okay, so I know we kind of digress from the next point of your research, which was now that you've made the decision, how do you go about it, right?
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
maybe we can just delve into that.
Sure. So as I said, I broke it down into 5 points. The middle point, number 3, we'll call it, was the decision to continue. Points 1 and 2, what influenced that? Point 1 being external factors, impacts, and then that point 2 being internal. And then now I'll take you, listeners, over to the other side, points 4 and 5. What happens chronologically after you make the decision to continue? And basically we'll call point 4 the actions you take, and point 5 the behavioural traits you adopt. And my whole research and my findings from these interviews were the actions they took that worked, and the behavioural traits they were adopted that influenced continuity.
And when you say behavioral traits, is that like change in behavior or like adoption?
More adoption, and I think for a reader or an entrepreneur, I guess would listen to this or read the thesis and say, maybe this is something I'm practicing. I'm not practicing, and then it's adoption. But these are common entrepreneurial traits. But my findings more prove sort of that they do what you hope they do, and they do lead to continuity, and they do strengthen your business. And they were based off the concept of entrepreneurial marketing, which concept and research that was founded in the 90s by researcher Michael Morris, late 90s, early 2000s, and a few researchers before him. And it was basically the concept of marketing, which we all know, but entrepreneurial marketing is described as performing business in a turbulent environment, such as you would when starting a business, as an entrepreneur would. You start a business, it's turbulent. There's a lot that's uncertain, and that's why they created entrepreneurial marketing in a similar setting, similar situation, and that's what the whole thing was. And so the 5 behavioral traits that I found, characteristics, will say, that were utilized during this period that contributed to this continuity is, firstly, opportunity seeking, resource organizing, innovative thinking, customer value creation, and accepting risk. So I've touched upon a bit of resource organizing, accepting risk earlier with with effectual reasoning, but opportunity seeking, innovative thinking, and customer value creative are equally as important. And in my finding, I showed them linked to sort of a pentagon where they're all, it's 5 rings, all linked between each other. And that was sort of my findings, showing that these traits go hand in hand. And so we'll start with opportunity seeking. I mentioned David Brown seeking out that ginormous government prison contract that initially saved them. Opportunity seeking is what an entrepreneur is doing. Opportunity seeking is what an entrepreneur is doing all the time. It's seeking that next opportunity. I'll digress for just 1 minute, but my whole passion for this project and my whole passion for entrepreneurship derives from my dad, who is a business founder. He's an architect, but a founder of his own architecture firm, Noordanus Architects. He founded in 95, 94, I believe. And growing up seeing him, yes, he's an architect, but he's a business owner, to his core, really. He's a CEO, he's an entrepreneur, and he's really a marketer as well. And I think that's where I got my interest for marketing was seeing my dad. Yes, he's an architect, but he spent his day on the phone, chasing opportunities, chasing jobs, meeting people, clients face to face, selling his brand, presenting at projects, securing projects, and then his team and him work on that project. But he's the one out there chasing the opportunities. And so opportunity seeking is something all entrepreneurs do. During a tough time, it's just even more important, because otherwise, what's going to happen? So we talked about Angus Brown and Cameron Lee. They seized that opportunity of switching markets, going after the parents. Talked about Lads Without Labels, opportunity that we can still keep in contact with our team, but we're just going to do it virtually. An opportunity. We'll talk about Arepa, Angus Brown. I mentioned slightly. Opportunity with seeking was evident with Angus, where in a period where a lot of companies were cutting costs, revenues down, budgets tight, wage subsidies full effect. Let's cut all the unnecessary costs. And let's be honest here, even as a marketer, marketing goes first, right? Marketing's very much perceived as a nice to do. Once we're killing it and we've got it, the budget's good, we'll spend it on marketing so we can grow. It's a nice to do. Angus Brown perceived that situation as a flip. What an opportunity. This is a period where companies are going to be cutting their marketing spend, their ad spend right back. And in social media marketing, a pool that is very diluted, very concentrated, he saw an opportunity where it was actually going to be uninhabited for a short amount of time. So he invested greatly in social media marketing, digital ad spend, CRM, you name it. He invested in that end, and he saw a ginormous turnaround. He invested in it to ensure their audience knew how to find them. They were fortunate to be sold in supermarkets that we all know kept going through the pandemic. But he sought that opportunity, and he did his research, and he found an opportunity that contributed greatly to their continuity. That's an example of opportunity seeking. Talked about resource organizing, talked about accepting risk. Customer value creation pertains to the whole, the wall between you and your customer. Like it could be thunderstorms and lightning on your side as the entrepreneur, but as Angus Brown and Cam decided, it's sunshine and rainbows as far as the customer's concerned. The customer can't know that we're walking through hellfire right now. And that was shown through. Look at Lads Without Labels during this period. They were making sure they were checking in on their clientele and their following. And we'll look at New Zealand Seed Lab, essential service. And what Decima McCloy offers is essential grain and seed testing for the New Zealand rural farming grain and seed industry. And in that industry, farmers don't get paid until their seed is checked and it passes these compliance restrictions that Decima provides. And so basically, Decima knew just how crucial it was that she continued for her customer base, for her audience, her clients, because if she didn't, they're not getting paid. Yes, there's a pandemic, but tough. These are farms. There are rules that still adhere, and these seeds need to get tested for these compliance standards, but also for themselves, because if their seed's no good, I mean, what a waste. It's months till they find out the seed's no good, and that's a crop that they're not going to see. So Decima put in the hard yards. Her employees were able to work as essential services. She restructured her whole business, how people operated. She's lucky enough to have there's that word luck again, but she's fortunate enough to have a big plot of land. She was able to spread her staff out, not just in an office setting, but spread them right across her land. So there was no brushing of shoulders, no chance people were catching the pandemic, and to this day, 5 years later, she still has not caught it, COVID-19, which is unbelievable. But so that's an example of customer value creation, where she really put her customers first. She put in extra hours, no weekends, no holidays, no late nights, and her staff did as well, and she really had to look after her staff. And then finally, talk about accepting risk. Then the fifth one was innovative thinking, and that was a big trend around where the participants would say, we just had to think creatively to get around it. We had to think creatively to get around it. And we think innovation, especially in Creolab's situation, and innovation is viewed very much as designing sort of with your digital sort of frontier, the next invention, the next this. But if you really strip innovation right back to the roots, it is creativity at the end of the day. And creativity can be depicted through how you go about a decision. And that was definitely found within this case, and is found in entrepreneurship all over. You don't have to be a digitally frontier of a business to demonstrate innovation. It can be innovation in a library, sort of industry, and in a paperback sort of industry. There is innovation everywhere. And so, an example of innovation to sort of end this question of an action that was achieved, again, back to Angus Brown from a Reaper situation, again, where a lot of companies sort of batten down the hatches, bundle the budget up, don't overspend. He saw the opportunity of a lot of the employees being based in their homes, and seized it as an opportunity to virtually set up the 3PL and their Australian market from their homes and from their remote desktops. They established sort of the online store that they sort of had been working on, and they just kick-started an Australian market. And they innovated when, yes, they would have loved to be over there in person, but they innovated and did the whole thing remotely, set up a very good e-commerce platform that, according to Angus, is now overtaking their New Zealand platform that's been going for over 10 years. It overtook it in a matter of a couple of years, which was founded on the shoulders of their innovation during one of the greatest disconnect periods in history. So in
that case, what would be the customer value at going forward, right?
For
a Rayman, because I'm assuming it's an e-commerce platform.
Sure.
What was the offering that was kind of an extra value for the customer?
Absolutely, yeah. So innovation being establishing, creating the e-commerce platform. The customer value creation would be, right, this is the period where immunity is the greatest worry, right? Am I going to get this pandemic? Is it going to kill me? What's it going to do to me? Your immunity is number one. And a Reaper is very heavily a science research-based product. So we talk about Angus Brown investing in the marketing. He invested in the science behind it and came up with cold hard fact around the immunity and what it offers there, and that became the marketing that went out and sort of on the e-commerce platform was, listen, it wasn't, hey, this will cure your COVID, because it won't, but there's serious immunity benefits to the product that are proven, not just hearsay. And he's got the science to back it up, which is something I very much respected about him, and something he advised. Final question for him was, what would you say to young entrepreneurs? He said, listen, invest in the science, invest in what you can prove your product does and your service does, because if you can prove that, it's gold. And that became his marketing, which was, listen, like, the Reaper offers strong immunity. It's available here on e-commerce. It's also available in these supermarkets. Yeah. That was the customer value, which was, hey, listen, here's how you can get it. Yeah. And here's what it'll do for you specifically in this time. Not just, hey, don't forget about our product. Keep buying, please. Yeah. It was, this is topical, guys. This is helpful, and this is, we feel for you, our customers, and we want to help you. Here's how you can still reach us, and so that's the creation of customer value. Innovation was the website.
Oh wow, I mean that's like I say, it's really topical, and I was very curious as to how that would have been like the value add for the customer, but. I can see the themes already, sort of like being common within the six businesses. And I guess probably just to finish up, you mentioned you had a final question for all the what was the recommendations? I mean, if you could share the six,
absolutely,
that'd be awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing about our thesis is after a certain amount of time, you've got it all in your head. You've spent enough time writing it, you know it by heart. Yeah. So I'll try and remember all six. Feel like I should be able to. I thought that was a really important question to end on, because yes, it's research, but I wanted it to be tangible advice that could be adopted by companies. I mean, yes, it's a 40,000 word thing, but I wanted it to be more of a manual than a theory. Something as a, hey, listen, I need some help. What can I do? What could I do? How could I do it? This is proven research for businesses that made it through. And so, I thought, final question, if you could do it all over again, or for other entrepreneurs, final advice that you'd give to entrepreneurs in uncertain business settings, because God knows there's a lot of uncertain business settings. It doesn't have to be a pandemic. So
great question.
It's a good question. I got to give credit to my supervisor for helping me give me the idea for that one. But great idea. So let's have a thing. Decima McCloy from New Zealand Seed Lab, her advice was, you're not there without your staff, you're a team. And if you're good to them, they'll be good to you. She looks at sort of what she had to do. Yes, she did the long hours. She did the weekends, she did the holidays. But you're not there without your staff. And so she needed her team to perform the volumes of work to create that customer value, to get by. When the resources weren't there, she needed some employees to sort of, make the alternative resources, so to speak. There's all these behavioural traits, but you're not there without your staff. So that was her advice. So look after your staff and they'll look after you. Angus Brown, he more leaned on the sort of the importance of marketing in such a setting, and your science, the fact around your product. So if there is science in the industry, that you're doing, and if science around your specific product, invest in that and invest in your marketing. He really recommended that as a means of growing, and creativity, innovation. He more leant on the side of this is the time to innovate and create, not batten down the hatches and hang on to the budget, which I feel like unpopular opinion with a lot of businesses because it's a tough time. So that was his advice. Dion Nash, he gave a lot of really good advice. I think he looked at advice sort of, really know your resources, really know, the risk, look at that effectual reasoning. And sort of, and that led to sort of the informing of his decisions. And now, he's back out there in the world, international. He's killing it. The brand is slowly but surely getting back to the market share that they had beforehand in those markets. Tough decision, risk of will we ever go back out there and pertain that. But I guess his advice sort of pertained to don't underestimate the sort of brand loyalty you might already possess. The market share, there's value in that. David Brown, he spoke a lot about sort of what entrepreneurs have to do by themselves. There's a lot. He talked about times where he sort of, maybe feeling of a lack of support. Like Angus Brown said, there's a lot on the entrepreneur's shoulders. David Brown talked about sort of the feeling of, we'll get through it. Whatever it is, you get through it. You work hard, you get through it. But I think his advice is sort of be there for one another, support people. That was something he did. Is essential or not, he offered his support. And that customer value creation, right? He's there offering that. So I think his advice heavily around sort of create that value for your customers, but be there for your employees and your fellow entrepreneurs as well, and sort of be there for everyone because uncertainty is tough. You don't know. And I'm just going to think about more advice. Angus and Cam from the Flat Pack Company gave really good advice around pivoting, about creativity again. Big theme around creativity, and that's why innovative thinking was added to the behavioural trait. It really backed up that creativity that where in a time like that it's uncertain, you'll sink if you don't swim, and that was evident with them, breaking down the conformities and the molds that they'd established. They had to retarget, they had to go elsewhere. And they had to reach out to other models they'd done, create content in another way. They'd been very, small group, just the two of them, co-workers, just the two of them in the business at the time, and they make all their content themselves. They had to kind of branch out. They really advised on the creativity. Stay creative. Big theme around swim, don't sink. I think the safe option feels cut everything right back, but the theme that I found here. Yes, being an entrepreneurial marketing paper was the marketing process and the reaching out and the opportunity seeking is what ensures business continuity. You can't ensure it, but it helps with it, A lot of advice around opportunity seeking. Pursue those opportunities, pursue those networks you were talking about, quote unquote lucky coincidences. But a lot of, you've got networks, you've got a lot of resources, and that's where that effectual reasoning comes in. What resources have you got available to you? What are the risks facing? Right, can I weather this risk with the resources I have, the team I have, with the facilities I have, with the current raw materials I have, with the supply chain? Is that going to get me through? It is? All right, that'll get me through. And I think the best piece of advice that I'll finish with did come from Angus and Cam, and their whole philosophy has always been build the plane while flying it. A concept, no matter how you say it, is being well known and being used by entrepreneurs everywhere. Build the plane while you're flying it, and that looks like when a bed would be sold, they'd use that to go towards the company. They were in a fortunate position where they could pay themselves less because they were students. They had your living costs coming in, but where you can put back into the company and build the plane while you're flying it. It'll never be perfect. It was a theme I found, but use what you've got to build the plane. And that looked like taking sales revenue and putting it into building the back end of the website, putting it into building the this, building the that. Bit by bit, you continue, and the operations keep going. But I thought that build the plane while you're flying it, brilliant analogy. But, and Dion Nash gave the example of sort of the hurricanes, the earthquake, the tornadoes just come through. Yes, the house is damaged, but the house is still there. The roof's still on. You haven't lost everything. It's a matter of what you do now. Is it going to collapse on you if you don't do anything? But if you can start putting it back together brick by brick, you can probably save this house. It's just about how you do it. So build the plane while you're flying it, and fix the house while you can, brick by brick. So yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. For all of you listening to this episode, great information, I think, for all of us. I wouldn't have been able to summarize it any better, so we might as well just leave it there. But thank you for sharing all your knowledge.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me on the show.
That's all good. Thank you for listening to Resolve by Creolab. If you would like to know more about how to turn your product idea into a successful reality based on industry interviews, best practice, research, and your feedback, follow this podcast and my socials for the latest content.